We're joined now by David Ruffley. He was a Shadow Minister for Police Reform when the Tories were in opposition, and Peter Kirkham, who used to be a Detective Chief Inspector in the Metropolitan Police. David Ruffley, let me come to you first. As you look at what's just been happening there, and MPs in the Commons calling for Mr Yates to go, it's hard to conclude, is it not, that his position is now untenable?
I think his position is untenable. I don't think he's lying, but what he can't answer is this question. The 11,000 pages of documents that were seized in 2005-6, Mulcair, referred to the details of Millie Dowler, relatives of Seven, and also the Soham murders. Now, that was the information in the bin bags when in 2009 he was asked, is there anything more we should be looking at? And for him not to know or have reliable lieutenants to go in and say, this is what we've looked at, Commissioner Yates, is beyond belief. So he's not a liar, but he's not competent. And I think there's a wider issue now. The London public and the British public just think, are the police on top of things? And I think the answer from today's evidence must be no.
Peter Kirkham, you've got bin bags of evidence full, as it turns out, of smoking guns.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you don't bother looking at them.
They were looked at to some extent, presumably by the original investigation, which was not John Yates's. What John Yates was asked to do, in view of the Guardian article, was consider whether there was new evidence that merited reopening that original investigation, which he had not been part of. He took the view, having spoken to the officers involved in that, that it wasn't. There was nothing new. And then effectively took it on trust that they had done a competent job originally. He wasn't asked to check whether they had done a competent job. It sounds like he
gave
took
the
that
impression that we were, certainly as journalists, we were given the impression that another voice had looked at the original inquiry and ruled it okay.
I think there's
now it's been told that's not what happened.
I think there's some learning there in terms of the language that was used and what review and means and what people consider it to mean.
But Peter Kirkham, it's kind of, you know, we're dealing here with a police force, elements of whom seem to be in the pay of News International, elements of whom have an incredibly cosy relationship with News International, some of whom, when they resign from the police, end up working for News International. And you're telling us that we just need to learn about the use of language?
No, I'm saying that on that particular point, that I think what John Yates was saying was misinterpreted because he was using phrases that meant one thing and they were being heard as meaning another.
Well, nobody put us right.
I'm not sure that he recognised that he was being misunderstood. But in relation to the whole thing, yes, there are serious issues about the whole framework of how the media and the police work together. It's an inevitable relationship, but it needs a clear ethical framework.
There's a former commander of specialist operations at Scotland Yard has said at the time Mr Yates was dealing with serious terror threat of the UK, he had his hands full. When people are saying he should resign, let's think about what else he was doing at the time. What do you say to that?
The police, and Ken Livingstone said this, have never been so well-resourced at the Met at the time this was going on. And if he didn't have the resources, it was his duty to say, I don't have the resources, and to be very clear to everyone what investigation he'd done. But all this stuff we heard from Ian Blair as well earlier on this morning about hindsight, this really is unacceptable. It's mealy-mouthed logic chopping and talking about words here. There was a set of smoking guns in the Met, and they signed off saying, actually, there's nothing more to investigate. Now, Yates himself should have had a team who were actually tasked by him to give him the right answer if he didn't want to go through the bin bags himself. And his position is not tenable, but it also asks big questions about police resources. I hear all this nonsense about, you know, they had a 50% real terms increase in the last 10 years in this country, and if he didn't have enough cops to help him, he should have said so and got someone else to do it.
They've got 70 on it now, probably more than most murder inquiries. Mr Kirkham, let me ask you this in broader terms. I mean, it's part of my job to mix with political leaders on the left and the right and the centre. And I've been doing that a lot in the past week. I have never known among senior politicians in this country such hostility to the police. Is the Met in particular aware that they have lost the confidence of the political leaders of this country?
I'm sure they are. We're dealing with a very unique situation where the police have got a relationship that's inevitable with the organisation that is suspected of serious criminality now. We've also got the issue of, are there old scores being settled? Are there people trying to deflect attention from their failings politicians deflecting attention to police officers deflecting attention to the media deflecting attention to politicians. We need to set this against the backdrop of what Ian Blair said earlier on. It wasn't considered a major issue. I'm not sure we consider it a major issue now. There is a massive market in trade in personal data. You look at the story in The Guardian today, Devon and Cornwall invested 3 years in a major investigation that came to court in 2005, and the judge said it ain't worth trying and kicked it out.
I saw that. I don't think the judge would be doing. I don't think the judge would be doing that today. Charles Kennedy, you speak to politicians more than I do. Are you aware? Do you agree that there's almost a complete collapse of trust in the competence and integrity of elements of the police among political leaders at the moment?
Yes, I think that's a fair assessment, and it's not, if you like, the usual suspects who might be of a slightly anti-establishment view of life in general. I cannot tell you
that three Tory cabinet ministers have come up to me in the past 3 days expressing huge hostility.
I'll tell you what it's also a reflection of, and this goes back to the revelations of last week, which preceded Murdoch's decision to shut down the News of the World. MPs are... Our role should not be dismissed completely, and it sometimes is, as being mere ciphers or reflectors of what our electorate are saying to us. There are certain occasions where actually the whole purpose of parliamentary democracy works, and we're lightning conductors. And I think every one of us, the length and breadth of the country, when some of the revelations started coming out, particularly about the child, the tidal wave of public anger that was communicated to us, I think you're seeing that reflected in what you're hearing.
Gentlemen, we'll have to leave it there, but I have a feeling we'll be coming back to it. I thank you both for joining us this morning.